We are starting our next panel, which is called Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Eurasian Economic Union, Nato, China's energy security. And I want to ask Mr. Daniel Shapiro, who is a Fulbright Students Research Fellow, and he is a great scholar. He has published many interesting and important articles to moderate this panel.
Thanks, Mahesh, for the introduction and also just for organizing this conference in general. It's been a great, I was here yesterday as well. It's a great day yesterday. And so far it looks like it's shaping up to be a good day as well today. So anyway, as Mahesh mentioned, this is panel 7 now. This is a pretty widely ranging panel. There's a lot of different topics that we're going to be discussing here. So, you know, a lot of international organizations, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Eurasian Economic Union, NATO, and then also energy security as well. So there are a lot of subjects that'll be covered. We've got a lot of people to get to as well. So I'm just going to jump right into it. So without further ado, if we have Dr. Mahesh Ranjan Debata from Jawaharlal Nehru University in India. Dr. Debata will be speaking on Shanghai Cooperation Organization at 20, an Indian perspective. So Dr. Debata, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And at the outset, let me sincerely thank the organizers of such a wonderful conference and my dear friend, Professor Mahesh. And I believe a special panel on the Shanghai Cooperation Organization at this conference is very timely, keeping in view the fact that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which was established as a regional grouping in June 2001, has completed 2 decades of its existence this year, that is the 2021. From a modest beginning in 2001, the SCO has at present 8 members, 4 observers, and 6 dialogue partners at present, which showcases its importance as an important factor in regional and global system of international relations. My paper begins with how India has been looking at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and what role it has played in this regional grouping in the last 1.5 decades of its association with the grouping. It argues that amidst the chaotic and the critical situation in Afghanistan a couple of months ago, the SCO on its special occasion will have tremendous responsibility to establish peace and stability, to bring out order, and to take care of the needs and aspirations of its members. The significance of the SCO emerges from the notion that this international grouping comprises India's strategic partner Russia, its immediate neighbors China and Pakistan, and most importantly, the Central Asian republics of Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. Through the institution like SCO, New Delhi aims at including and enhancing geopolitical and strategic connections, trade and economic cooperation, and people-to-people contact with the aforesaid countries. It is a well-known fact that India has been actively participating in all SCO fora, first as an observer member since July 2005, for over 12 years, and then as a full-fledged member since June 2017. With the advent of complex interdependence to leverage the benefits of economic development of advanced nations in the multipolar world, India adopted the strategy of collaboration with all major states to possess stable relationships with all nations in the region, including China. Participation in this organization also assumes significance amidst the Chinese insistence on the Belt and Road Initiative project in the Eurasian region. Therefore, by becoming the member state of the SCO, India has accurately held the position that it is not against any multilateral connectivity project unless it violates territorial integrity and sovereignty. SCO's importance for India further grew because of the constant efforts of present Indian government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi immediately after becoming the popular elected head of the country, the first thing Prime Minister Modi did was to formally submit application for the full membership to the then SCO chair, the Tajik president, prior to the SCO summit in Dushanbe in September 2014. This bore the fruit at the next SCO summit in July 2015 in Ufa, Russia, where the initiation of the process of the accession of India into SCO was done. Prime Minister Modi attended the SCO summit in Tashkent, Uzbekistan on 23rd, 24th June 2016, wherein India signed the Memorandum of Obligations to obtain the status of member of SCO memorandum and was granted the status of full member at the Astana summit by Prime Minister Modi, such as secure SECURE and the health in 2008 importance for the SCO. At Qingdao summit on 9th-10th June 2018, the concept secure provided the blueprint of India's priorities at the SCO. The concept, the acronym secure, S for security for citizens, E for economic development, C for connectivity in the region, U for unity, R for respect of sovereignty and integrity, and E, environment protection. Further, at the next summit at Bishkek, the concept of health, the acronym stands H for healthcare cooperation, E for economic cooperation, A for alternate energy, L for literature and culture, T for terrorism-free society, and H for humanitarian cooperation. This was coined by the Prime Minister of India. PM's message summed up India's constructive and positive approach to the entire SCO process while assuring our resolve and commitment to work with the SCO countries in close cooperation. The next immediate step after becoming the SCO member also showcases India's commitment to the SCO. India established the SCO division in the Ministry of External Affairs and appointed national coordinator and permanent representative to SCO. In addition, there has been regular high-profile Indian participation in various SCO meetings. Ministers of Home Affairs, External Affairs, State for Law and Justice, Commerce and Industry, Additional Solicitor General, Ministry of Law and Justice, Defense Minister, State for Tourism Minister, for Culture and for Human Resource Development. They have taken part in the SCO deliberations from time to time. India has been at the forefront in establishing a working group looking at the digital commerce and startups and the SCO University, in addition to supporting joint urban earthquake rescue exercise, climate change, prevention and elimination of emergency situations, furthering health cooperation during the COVID-19 pandemic. For example, at the first two-day military medicine conference hosted in India on 12th and 13th September 2019 as part of the SCO Defense Cooperation Plan 2019-20, the Indian Armed Forces demonstrated the rapid action medical team and organized a guided tour for the delegations of military medicine experts to Army Research and Referral Hospitals in New Delhi. India believes the SCO is the right forum that has been addressing the issue of terrorism, one of India's major concerns in the last couple of decades. It is imperative to highlight here that since its inception in 2001, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has been adopting a resolution to combat the three evil forces: separatism, religious extremism, and terrorism. India's resolve to fight terrorism within the ambit of SCO was faithfully reflected during its participation in an anti-terror drill of the SCO from 22nd August to 29th August 2018 in Chebarkul, Russia. The exercise involved tactical level operations in an international counter-insurgency or counter-terrorism environment under the SCO Charter. This was for the first time India participated in the SCO military exercises since becoming a full member of SCO in June 2007. About 3,000 soldiers from China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan participated in the drill. The Indian contingent comprised of 200 personnel, primarily from the infantry and affiliated arms and services along the Indian Air Force. To conclude, India has been paying respect to the SCO as an important regional as well as international grouping. New Delhi sees great value in participating in the SCO. For example, even amidst the border clash with China in June 2020, Prime Minister Modi attended the SCO Leaders Summit on virtual platform and appreciated the role of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. At the SCO Summit in September 2021, this year, India expressed concern over the prospects of radicalization and extremism in the broader SCO region, with reference to rapid fall of Afghanistan into the hands of Taliban, and also gave a clarion call to the member states for strong, meaningful, and unstinted cooperation. The SCO, following the Indian footsteps, called for cooperation amongst the international community in its fight against all forms of terrorism and to not support any manifestations of extremism and radicalization. It also encouraged economic integration and called for deep cooperation in health sector and other fields to enhance the member states' capabilities in its fight against the pandemic. India believes that the global forum like Shanghai Cooperation Organization plays the notable role in establishing close contacts between the member countries and provides opportunity to jointly respond to the international challenges within the broad framework of mutual respect and coordination amongst each other to maintain peace and stability in the region. Recently, the 8-Nation Security Dialogue on Afghanistan at New Delhi on 10th November 2021 by the National Security Advisors of 6 Shanghai Cooperation Organization members exemplifies India's care and concern for regional security, which has been one of the essential objectives of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Can you hear? Okay, great. Thanks so much. So our next speaker will be Dr. Elżbieta Pron from the University of Silesia in Katowice, Poland. We're talking about China and international institutions, the case of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and China's foreign policy in Central Asia. So Dr. Pron, if you're here, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen with you because I have prepared the presentation for my speech. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation. As you already said, I will be talking today about China international institutions on the case of the SCO and China's foreign policy interests in Central Asia. Before I start, I just wanted to say that this is still a research in progress, and therefore I will be very happy to hear your feedback, comments, your views on the topic, and I believe it will be a great addition to what I have been researching now. So the order of the presentation, first I will try to set up a kind of a background about the SCO prior to 2013, which I believe is kind of an important kind of dividing date between what was happening with the SCO once it was established until this important date of 2013, and how the SCO evolved after it. Then I will briefly summarize China's interest and foreign policy priorities in Central Asia after 2013. The SCO evolution, which was already very nicely summarized by Dr. Debata, and then the SCO and China's foreign policy interest in Central Asia from the perspective of today. So as for the background, we have already had a nice story from Dr. Debata about these main areas of cooperation, the beginnings of the SCO. So let me just shortly summarize them to security, economics, which were two priority fields of cooperation, security having the first place, economics being developed as the second one, although it met with many obstacles. And then the third issue area of the SCO cooperation was energy, culture, education, initiatives such as SCO University, and so on and so forth. And the main conclusion when we look at this initial period of the SCO is that in the context of Central Asia and Sino-Central Asian relations, from the perspective of China, the SCO was used by China to foster a kind of a congenial milieu for its foreign policy interests in the region and beyond. Despite this multiple diverse fields of cooperation, it's the primary function of the SCO from the Chinese perspective was to forge a kind of a regional alliance, regional cooperation, understanding, and make China a permanent member of the Central Asian political, security, and economic landscape. A very detailed analysis of what was happening is actually in my recently published book. I'm actually expecting it to be out this month, so with the cover here on the slide, if you are interested. But the main question of this presentation is how actually China has used the SCO to foster its regional foreign policy interests in Central Asia after 2013. It can be broken, we can break it down to three kind of sub-questions. How has China's foreign policy interests in Central Asia evolved? Have they evolved at all? How has the SCO evolved? And what does it tell us about China's use of international institutions in a broader context? So if we try to look at the first of these sub-questions, it's still very much the same issue areas that we had before 2013, which is all about political influence, security, and economics. In terms of political influence, we still have this, let's call it broadly, Xinjiang issue. Things have changed after 2015. Xinjiang ethnic and security policy have changed, but the Xinjiang has still been the core issue area when it comes to security, but also when it comes to political support of Central Asia governments for what China has been doing, or at least kind of an acceptance of China's own domestic policy interests. China still wants to have influence over local politics, not so much to interfere in local politics, but to make sure that the local politics, local Central Asian politics of all these Central Asian countries are not against China, as well as good environment for Chinese investments. In case of Central Asia, of course, political elites are very closely connected with business elites. The top of business elites working in energy sector, in the economic sector. So it's really important that China has good communication with local politicians, that there is kind of a mutual understanding, a mutual acceptance, and so on and so forth. Then we still have security from the perspective of today. I would say that now even more than we had for past few years, with the Afghanistan issue coming up again since August. So there are three so-called three evil forces of terrorism, extremism, radicalism, the way China and other SCO community understands it. And we also have domestic security issues. I'm particularly referring to Kyrgyzstan, but not only Kyrgyzstan, of course, in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, we had different protests, insurgencies, political turmoils. Probably Kyrgyzstan has been the most prominent example of it. And there's the kind of a danger of their potential spillover to China, as most of these countries, except for Uzbekistan, border China. And then we have economics and energy, which is very closely related with the first issue area, to make sure that that China can still benefit from its relationship with Central Asia. It can invest, it can it can secure access to the energy resources, but also that Central Asia will enjoy economic growth, will enjoy stability, and therefore the political elites of the region will be will have in China's view, more power, more control over the countries. There will be less unrest in Central Asian states, and so on and so forth. So if you look at this issue area, they have not changed much. It's still the same interest that China is forging in Central Asia as it forged before. When we look then at the SCO institutional evolution after 2013, Dr. Debata already said we had the SCO enlargement. We have more members, but also more observers, more partner states, and more partner institutions. So there are many more people, many more countries involved in the SCO. But of course, from the perspective of the organization, institutional development, the most important things are members, because these are those countries which have actual voice, which have actual say on the SCO outlook or on its cooperation, main fields of cooperation and cooperation priorities. And as for the institutional evolution, apart from the members, the main issue areas have not changed much. There were only very minor developments when it comes to this, to the different permanent bodies that exist in the SCO. And despite this huge expansion, enlargement, we still have the same permanent bodies working for the same issue areas, which, as I said, fall into security, economics, and energy. So now what can we actually say about the SCO and China's foreign policy interest in Central Asia? About the SCO, as we have seen, it enlarged, it expanded, but not really evolved institutionally. The same, it is continued to be, there are still the same main fields of cooperation, still the same institutions. The problems that it had before 2013, particularly with establishment of the energy multilateralism and energy club, still persist. It has not evolved, it has not been solved. It's still a kind of a talking club or a dead body when we try to look at the cooperation. The SCO still continues to be a means to forge cooperation and political influence, China's political influence in Central Asia. But what we can see is that China is actually moving away from the SCO being a means to expand its bilateral cooperation, bilateral political influence into more multilateral one. Before 2013, the SCO was important, but it was a kind of a safe common ground that was supposed to help China to build this political consensus with individual Central Asian states. Now what we can see is that the SCO has become a means to develop other institutions in the region. So one of them is this Quadrilateral Security Alliance that was established in 2016 by Tajikistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China. And it is believed, it's quite modest, it's led by China, but it's believed to have some really big potential given the involvement of security forces, the regular, maybe not military trainings, but regular meetings of those military guards and their cooperation in this very dangerous and very problematic for China border area. We also have Belt and Road Initiative, which is widely believed to be a result of China's previous earlier activeness in terms of the SCO in Central Asia. So we have security cooperation, multilateral cooperation in terms of security. We have multilateral cooperation in terms of economics. And of course, we have still depending cooperation on arms sales, security and military trainings, deployment of People Liberation Army forces abroad, and so on and so forth. So the SCO itself, despite this expanded membership, does not seem to change much. But what has changed is that China seems much more confident in engaging in different institutions in the region, becoming a leader of them, even being active of these institutions, which involved a kind of a politically more difficult partners like Afghanistan, which is which is perceived as a complicated issue nowadays. So we can see that China has becoming more confident as the institution maker through this experience with the SCO, but also through its experience with Central Asian individual governments. And I believe my turn is at the end of my time, because so I've seen that we all had like about 10 minutes for the presentation. So I will stop here. Thank you for your attention. I'm also, as I said, I'm very happy to hear your comments, feedback, and views. And that's it for today from me. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks so much. Our next speaker will be Ms. Jayshree Borah, who is currently a doctoral candidate Shanghai International Studies University in China. And she will be speaking on regional multilateralism in China, China's push for the SCO as a platform for regional security multilateralism. So Ms. Borah, if you are here, the floor is yours.
And I really want to say congratulations to the two previous speakers. It was really put well together, and they have actually covered a lot on Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So for my presentation, what I'm going to do is, so I have asked this question: what is Chinese approach towards regional multilateral organizations, and how China perceives regional multilateral organizations in terms of security issues and conflict resolution? So what I have done in my paper is I have linked regional multilateralism with Chinese foreign policy making, like how these two are linked together and not two separate dimensions. So first, giving a little bit of background, in China's diplomatic practice, it's bilateralism often it comes forward rather than multilateralism, and it has been a predominant in traditional Chinese foreign policy. And going back to China's engagement with multilateral organizations, just during the Mao Zedong time, it was guided by the suspicion against the international organizations due to the Western domination over, and also it was also ideological issues due to ideology. And but after 1971 and after Deng Xiaoping's opening up to China's opening up, the trust in multilateral organization has built, and it was also due to the financial and technical help China was getting from these multilateral organizations. China has realized that China's participation in international organization could rise China's status quo in international order. So by the end of 2008, China has become a member of like more than 130 intergovernmental organizations and 24 United Nations specialized agencies. However, when it comes to regional multilateralism, which I believe that which is more predominant, which started since 2000 with the establishment of China-Africa Forum Diplomacy, the FOCAC, which is happening right now, and several other definitely SCO and ASEAN, but there is also this sub-regional organization which were kind of, we do not look at them through the mechanism of regional multilateralism. However, here for this paper, I have specifically looked at the security dimension of regional multilateralism, because often we looked into the economic dimension, which is, of course, is one of the important characteristics of China's when China participates in regional multilateralism. But in the recent decade, with China's more and more interest in in security issues, like and China's participation in with the conflicted states, and how China will be different when China participates in the hotspot issues such as Afghanistan, Myanmar, or Israel, Palestine. All these issues, I have through my research, I have seen that it is through regional multilateral bodies China feels more comfortable participating in conflict-prone countries in conflicted issues. Here I have characterized some characteristics for China's regional multilateralism, which is has these characteristics. One is, while we look at regional bodies, or regional organizations through Chinese lenses, it's not only it's not only regional, but also it has a bilateral in character. So, for example, for SCO, China would not only engage through SCO mechanism, but with all the SCO members, China would have separate bilateral relations, which it believes that through both bilateral and multilateral involvement, China would have more more close relationship with these nations. The second point is while making this regional multilateral organizations, it is mostly with the developing nations, and it's because China's relationship with the developing nations before, throughout the history, if we go back to the Bandung Conference through non-alignment movement, and China's comfortableness with the developing nations and South-South cooperation, it also characterizes South-South cooperation, as well as China is already participant in the international institution, international multilateralism. But while coming to regional multilateralism, it's participating in both international multilateralism, I would say, and then regional multilateralism. It gives China it caters to the needs of China's dual identity, which China often believes that it is also part of the developing. It is part of the developing nations. However, China's economic rise says that it is part of the developed nations. So some of these initiatives are the first economic initiative, like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, then Shanghai Cooperation Organization, then Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and for Security Cooperation Association of ASEAN also have this ASEAN Regional Forum, which is Regional Security Forum, ARF. So one of the reasons for China's engagement with multilateral organization in the security realm is because China's one of the difference with because of China's irritation with the Western style of security alliances, and it's because China has regularly labeled it as a Cold War relic. Instead of principle of collective security, Chinese of the Western alliances, the Chinese alliances, the China's regional multilateralism promotes comprehensive and cooperative security. So coming to the question of how regional multilateralism is linked to Chinese foreign policy. So in 2002, there's new white paper published. The Chinese Foreign Ministry, they published this paper on the new security concept. The new security concept, it lays out a comprehensive 21st century security strategy for a potential multipolar world order, is argued as a China's response to the existing global issues. Emergence of humanitarian crisis in several parts of the world, mostly in the African continent, has led the West and the UN respond in using humanitarian intervention as a solution to global security crisis. And China's dissatisfaction with the humanitarian intervention and the use of force has manifested in the position paper as it criticized the existing security concept based on the use of force. The new security concept, which has 4 primary characteristics: mutual confidence, reciprocal benefits, equality, and collaboration. And these characteristics of the new security concept is also, when you look at Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the mutual cooperation and reciprocal benefits, collaboration, all these characteristics are also present in Shanghai Cooperation Organization Charter. Now coming to the Chinese leaders, the new security concept was also enhanced when Hu Jintao, he presented peaceful development and harmonious world sharing. It was his in 2007, Hu Jintao said that China shall play its due role of a major responsible country and work jointly with other countries to meet global challenges. And he also said that we should participate in the multilateral affairs. We definitely should support United Nations, but also we should support G20, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS, and the other multilateral organizations which are playing active role in international affairs. Coming to Xi Jinping, who also has supported this kind of idea, and it was manifested in the new Asian security concept. NASC, and which was in 2004, which was during the Shanghai summit for the conference on interaction and confidence building measures in Asia, known as KISA, in 2014. The main component of NASC is also consisting of four security dimensions. For Asia, one is common security, comprehensive security, and cooperative security, and sustainable security. Sustainable security, which is also one of the key elements of China's security concept when Chinese policies towards conflicted countries, because Chinese policies towards conflicted countries is based on a concept called developmental peace, where China believes that security should come before development should come before security. So when you look at Chinese foreign policy, basically in this security concept, the security concept and China, when China participates in Shanghai Cooperation Organization meetings, the concept China put forward is similar to the concepts which are already present in Chinese foreign policy. So here I'm gonna just refer to what China means by common security. By common security, Xi Jinping means universal, equal, and inclusive security for all. Then by comprehensive security, he maintained that the focus should be given to equality to both traditional and non-traditional security challenges. And then by cooperative security, he means promoting security through dialogue and cooperation, which is also one of the essential features of China's policies towards conflicted countries, because China believes that instead of use of force, the hotspot issues should be tackled through negotiation and mediation. But mediation is also a Chinese characteristic, where the Chinese side keep pushing that they only accept to be a mediator only with the consent of the host state, which is one of the primary features of Chinese policies. The third is sustainable security, which is security is linked with development. Coming with the link between new security concept and Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which I have already mentioned some of it.
Sorry to interrupt real quick, but you're right over the 10-minute timeline, so just try to wrap it up really quick.
Okay,
sorry.
Thanks. Sure. Thank you so much. Yeah. So, so I have mentioned how this Chinese foreign policy is linked to multilateralism, and then coming to SCO, the previous speakers already have mentioned about SCO, and here how the sustainability, the sustainable security. So at the SCO, China is pushing for SCO developmental bank, which would be not only secure, which would China believes that it would be beneficial for security issues in the region through developmental banks. China is also asking for free trade areas in the SCO areas, not only for the SCO member state but also throughout the region, and which China believes that through this through economy it would be possible to have a security blanket to the area. So to wind up my presentation today, I would say that Chinese multilateralism and Chinese foreign policy has been present in Chinese foreign policy since 2000, and now China is pushing more for it. And the primary reason is that through SCO, if China can provide environment for regional multilateral security, and then it will be also a message to the Western world that the issues, that regional issues should be solved by regional mechanisms. Thank you so much for your patience, and here I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So our next speaker will be Ms. Angie Hesham, who's a PhD student at the University of Hull in the United Kingdom. And she'll be discussing the NATO tilt towards China. So Ms. Hesham, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Thank you so much for inviting me. And my paper will focus on China's rising interest in the Arctic, and I'll try to explain its motives and actions in the region. So the geopolitical situation of the Arctic now represents a considerable diversion from cold war power, great power politics to Aside from traditional Arctic governments, considerably more international organizations and non-Arctic states are becoming more interested in the Arctic. I attempt to investigate China's rising interest in the Arctic and the motives underlying its participation in the region. So China's interests range from Arctic administration to boosting bilateral diplomacy in the Arctic region, access to prospective resources, shipping prospects, and polar research. The Arctic is as important to China as the Belt and Road Initiative and the String of Pearls, as its significance lies in China's ability to communicate with the world through trade and infrastructure projects. There is a circulating notion within the Chinese community of always being encircled. Thus, the Chinese expansion beyond the Pacific and into the Arctic assist in alleviating this vulnerability. The recent development of China's influence has sparked worldwide concern about its intentions in the Arctic, particularly among council members. So according to Avery Goldstein, peaceful development was a strategy adopted by China in the 1990s to enable it to pursue modernization and economic growth, and at the same time assuage the fears of nations who perceive China as a threat. This strategy was evident in China's new white paper, which lays out its ambition for the Arctic and also in turn should allay some of the world's concerns about its transparency and adherence to international law. China's Arctic policy is still in its initial stages and confront several hurdles, including territorial sovereignty, issues among Arctic nations, vigilance among specific governments, and the natural environment in the Arctic area, and also China's technological limitations. Nonetheless, China has underlined the crucial point in its recently issued white paper, which is collaboration and shared prosperity for all. China's security issue in the Arctic should be viewed in the context of its larger maritime ambitions, owing to the topography of the Arctic with different isles and islands, and it's free of any isles. It's just easy to navigate for 2 months, and while the Northern American side is inaccessible as it's frozen all year round. China's economic interest in the Northern Sea Route and natural resources exploitation remains or mainly continue to be China's primary interest in the region. However, climate change has increased accessibility to potential Arctic resources, changing the geopolitical landscape and broadening the international focus on the Arctic to include more geographically distant countries such as China, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and India. Seeking observer membership in the Arctic Council is seen as a vital step toward ensuring that these Asian countries are involved in defining the future of the Arctic, an area that they will feel have an impact on their economic interest and global environmental concern. As the Arctic ice melts and Northern Sea Route emerges, expediting China's maritime travel to Europe and enabling access to untapped oil and mineral reserves. Beijing views the Arctic ice melting on the Russian side as a chance to exploit the Northern West Passage to reduce its dependency on the Malacca Strait, even though an ice-free environment brings up new business opportunities for partnership. China sees this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, our Arctic opportunity, as potentially beneficial to its international commerce and shipping, with enormous consequences for the Chinese economic future. Moreover, China has strengthened its interaction with Nordic nations, attempting to self-identify as a near-Arctic state and participant in Arctic issues to boost economic projects and improve transportation infrastructure. In the Arctic, advantages of China and Russian cooperation is widely evident. Despite the sanctions slammed on Russia by the United States, collaboration between China and Russia in the Arctic has aided Russia's ability to continue developing the NSR and energy projects. This development is advantageous to China since it's contributed to the diversification of China's oil imports and reduced China's reliance on the Middle Eastern oil. Moreover, China and Russia cooperation has a strategic component as well. Most Chinese oil transit routes come from the Middle East, and Africa flows through the Indian Ocean and the Malacca Strait, places where China is concerned with or about the US Navy's capacity to intercept these energy shipments. China can avoid this route owing to the NSR or the Northern Sea route. Economic interest in the Northern Sea route and natural resource exploitation remain China's primary key interest in the region, and most of its efforts are carried out in collaboration with Russia through the incorporation of the Polar Silk Road into the Belt and Road Initiative. China's strategic interest in the Arctic has caught the attention of the United States, which has been dubbed as the return of great power politics or competition under the presidency of Donald Trump, who designated China as a revisionist state along with Russia, and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo labeled China's aggressive actions as destabilizing the region and threatens the Arctic, which also called for the NATO's participation in freedom of operation navigation in the South China Sea, carried out by Germany and France. And the UK, also, President Trump attempted to bring China into a trilateral arms limitation agreement, and despite Trump administration failure to mishandle a diplomatic proposal to include China in the negotiations between the US and Russia in the nuclear arms negotiations, strategic competition between China and the US and Chinese encroachment into the US sphere of influence remains the overarching objective of seeking to include China into this treaty. So all in all, I think that as China endeavors to expand in the Arctic, it called for China, for the US to participate in and encourage more freedom of operation and freedom of operation navigations in the South China Sea to attempt to curtail China. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
So without further ado, we've got 6 people here, so that's why I'm trying to kind of move through these quickly. I apologize if it seems like I'm doing very short breaks, but that's why it is. So I guess with that in mind, we can move on to our next speaker then. This would be Mr. Ahmed Farooqis. So Mr. ISIK is a PhD student at the Shanghai International Studies University and a research assistant at the Shanghai Academy of Global Governance and Area Studies. And he'll be giving his presentation on in the context of energy security, the role of renewable energy, and the Chinese example. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
All right, so let me share my screen first. Okay, perfect. So thanks, first of all, thanks a lot for the kind introduction, and thanks a lot for the organization for Russian Armenian University. My name is Ahmed Farooqis again. Today I'm going to present the topic of in the context of energy security, role of the renewable energy and Chinese example. So let's start. First of all, energy security may be discussed by various perspectives. In this research, energy security is taken under the renewable energy context and takes China experience as a case study. In this regard, China is the biggest energy consumer, exporter, importer, and producer, has still faced an energy crisis in recent years. This research covers China's renewable energy experience in the context of energy security. So let's give some background information. Energy security means the keeping energy supply and resources safe and aware of the vulnerability of energy in the system under a stable system and affordable cost. Energy security is not only a matter of country's economy, but also politics. Energy security is a matter of national security. Therefore, in the country dependent on import energy, then energy security is not only inward, but also outward sides like securing the energy pipelines, roads, diplomatic relations that are located on the road. However, our modern energy system builds on fossil oil. Limited oil resources are the critical research topic for the future of the humanity. The world has been converting the use of fossil gas to natural gas. Although the natural gas is cleaner than fossil gas, Recently, it's known that being weaponized by some countries. It is clear that some days oil and natural gas will be run out. Then renewable energy may play an important role that supporting the energy supply system. In this regard, China, as the biggest energy consuming country in the world, does massive investments across the country on renewable. So when we come to China's energy security system, China, as the biggest energy consumer, importer, and producer, faced an energy crisis in recent months. Many factories have limited energy quotations to run their production. They have limited use of energy, the electricity. It brings an energy security question to the table again in a more strict way, maybe. China is the highly dependent on import energy, which makes the countries being affected by global changes like conflicts and health crises like COVID-19 pandemic. On the other hand, China's current population is 1.41 million and expected to increase to 1.46 by 2030s. That means China needs to increase the energy supply in the following years. For example, due to COVID-19 pandemic, many countries consume less oil in last year. Despite other countries, China was the only country that consumption rate increased. So energy dependency is a major risk for China's current and future developments. Therefore, China diversifies its energy resources to avoid putting the eggs in the same basket. At this point, renewable energy might play an important role. Chinese government invests renewable energy option across the country. As an example, 2 years ago, by 2090s, China surpassed Japan and became the largest importer of liquid natural gas, LNG. So the US is the biggest producer of the LNG, and China is the largest market holder. Country face risk of sanction, especially in the days of trade war. That shows that the country needs a long-term energy security plan. So when we come to green energy, the energy security is not only about the supply and transportation and demand, but also the environment and climate change. The majority of the Chinese primary energy consumption is based on coal, which produce a lot of carbon. The Chinese government has declared that by the 2060s, China will be a carbon neutral country. The countries aim to meet 35% of the demand with the green energy by 2030s. In this regard, Chinese invest more in lower carbon producer energy resources to solve the air pollution problem. As you know, there is a huge issue of air pollution across the country. During the COVID-19 lockdown, less use of traditional energy resources reduced the carbon release and increased the air quality in many countries. The post-COVID-19 era might be the chance to extend green energy in many parts of the world. So China struggles with the the air pollution issues across the country, as I mentioned, but that is another vital motivation to transferring energy resources to clean energy. So China is geographically the fourth largest country in the world. It shows that creating an alternative and oil-based energy system is very important to China, but there are some challenges on transferring to green energy. For example, in the long term, there is a challenge of cost. Producing renewable energy plants is costing more than other traditional energy resources like nuclear. The high cost of renewable energy may push electricity costs even to higher level. The high cost of energy might affect countries' industrial competitiveness. But on the other hand, there are some opportunities. In the ultimate scenario, the China's renewable energy investment will help China to keep the capital in the domestic market, create job opportunities in the country, as well as create less dependency on import energy. So China's investment on R&D activities in the renewable sector and increasing manufacturing capacities help to reduce the cost of the wind and photovoltaic, in other words, is the solar power around the world and increasing the efficiency. So let's come to result and key findings. China's investment on renewable energy and its dominating role in the sector may solve the Chinese energy security issues. It may even bring the energy independence to country in a long term. In the future, that might be an OPEC of renewable energy that controls raw material, solar panels, and as well as the related chemicals to use for the production of the renewable energy sector. And in this case, China as a main stakeholder of the renewable energy sector is expected to be Saudi Arabia of the new OPEC of renewable energy. For example, the polysilicon material is the most basic material of the solar energy. And from last year to now, it's tripled. The price is tripled. That show, and polysilicon material mostly produced in China, particularly in the border regions like Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang. So the China basically holding the polysilicon market across the world. So that is, I think, is a very clear example for this the mentioned argument. And hegemony on the basic renewable energy materials, strong R&D researches and advanced products may bring China a chance to be not only market leader, but also the biggest supplier of the renewable technology in many senses. It is expected that China will produce 1 in every 4 gigawatts of global renewable energy by 2040s. So thanks a lot for listening my presentation. And if you have any question, I will be glad to answer. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. So technically we're through here. Okay, that's fine. So we still have some time left, given the fact that we didn't have one of our participants actually. So for those of you who I sped up to get through their presentations, I sincerely apologize. Was not expecting that. So anyway, I'll just ask a few questions to our participants. I've written some things down that I've been thinking that I'm curious about. I think these were all excellent presentations, and they all sort of managed to fit together pretty well under sort of broader geopolitics. So it was an interesting group of presentations, and I liked that they were put together. So I guess I'll start. Mr. ISIK, considering you had the last presentation, I'll just ask you the first question as it is. So I guess my question for you is, as China moves toward renewables, how do you think that factor will affect its relations with energy providers, such as Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, that it currently trades with? How do you think those relationships will be affected over, say the next 20 years or so, as China really makes its transition toward these alternative forms of fuel instead of oil? I'd just be curious to hear your opinion.
I think that's a very great question. Thanks for the question. So as we know, China cooperating on traditional energy resources producer countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia, and being very careful with their relationship with those countries. But when we come to renewable energy, as I mentioned, it will take such a long time to establish, and it will be hard to, in a short term, it will be very hard to expect it to take over the traditional energy resources like petroleum, the fossil gas and oil. So China currently will be careful with the relationship with this country again. At the same time, China actually cooperating with those countries on renewable energy, because those countries, these traditional energy resource producer countries, they actually know that those resources will be run out in some days. So they are actually also investing on the renewable. And China, in this point, as a market holder, cooperating with those countries on renewable. Actually, It seems to be there might be challenge, but it creates more cooperation with those countries. And currently, we are not in that level to see actual challenge between those countries, but currently we are seeing some cooperations are going on.
Okay, so then I have one more question here. And this is just sort of about the SCO in general. So for any of the first three participants, really, it can apply. So I guess, obviously for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a key aspect is security. And, there's kind of the classic question, the SCO has some significant internal differences in geopolitical aims, whether it's between India and China or, questions about Xinjiang or otherwise. And this has sort of been viewed as a potentially limiting factor by people in the past, just, to the efficacy of the SCO as an organization. So I guess I'm just curious, for those of you who study the SCO here and work on it, how do you think the organization is going to deal with these sorts of factors and these sorts of geopolitical differences going forward? So honestly, this is kind of a question for any of the first three of you who spoke on the SCO. I'd be curious to hear your opinions.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I believe I can try to answer this question. Thank you so much for raising it. I think it's really, really important. So yes, I believe that drawing from the SCO experience, China will, sorry for this short interruption. Yeah, so I believe that drawing from this experience with the SCO, China will try to foster many different multilateral alignments in the region, and all these geopolitical challenges that we are facing now in Central Asia, in South Asia, West Asia, and particularly the issue of Afghanistan will be dealt by setting up different multilateral institutions by bringing many actors in. From the perspective of any of the SCO member states, none of them want to be left responsible from what to do with this, different geopolitical security issues in the region. They feel much more confident while they are working together. They are, working through some sort of multilateral institution, while they can kind of disperse the responsibility for it. And if we look, I think this very interesting and initiative from this perspective is this quadrilateral dialogue I mentioned. I think it's really crucial to see what will be happening with this forum, because it brings actors that have not worked closely before, a little bit like SCO in the 90s. It's a kind of experiment from this political point of view, but I think it's really crucial to see how much it will foster security in the region, this peaceful cooperation, and how well it will deal with the new geopolitical challenges. So I think I can see others raising their heads, so I won't occupy more of your time.
Great, thanks. Yeah, if anybody else wants to chime in, go for it.
Yes, it's a really interesting question, and Elżbieta has actually covered a lot of it, but then I want to give my view on it from the perspective of India, not only India, but other members. From security perspective, actually, most of the SCO members, they have the same security issues like terrorism, and and because of that, this is one of the issues that ties the SCO members together. And China is also the separatism and terrorism. It's not only China's issue, but broadly it's an issue of all the SCO members. And I believe that because of this issue, it is possible for SCO members to look past their political differences, especially with India. Also, in terms of India, I would like to say that, for example, in the case of Myanmar, even though China and India, they both have a diverse interest in domestic politics, and they have basically they oppose on the question of democracy also. India, even being a democratic country, because the countries from East, because these countries, developing countries, they still believe in the principle of non-intervention, and still believe in the principle of state sovereignty. And this is also one of the links that unites these member states together. And for example, as I said, that all these nations, they are against the use of force, which is why in some the security reasons, they would be, I think they would be, they would look forward to, work with each other, even though they have differences. And in terms of, as I mentioned about the Shanghai Cooperation Development Bank, which is the not only security, but also in the economic dimension, the members, they have different interests. For example, the SCO Developmental Bank, even though China is pushing for it since 2010, but the main opponent, which is very interesting because the main opponent is Russia, whether in other cases, Russia is, we always find like China and Russia as a peer or, work together. So even though, so that's very interesting. So we see that the economic cooperation, how China and Russia would, if they would, come together to build on the economic front as well. So yeah, that's my response. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. We have a couple minutes left, so Dr. Debata, if you want to add to that at all, go ahead.
No, thank you. I think perhaps almost all the aspects of your answer to your question have been covered, and thank you.
Great, sounds good. Well, in that case, we're right on time here. So thanks everybody for a very interesting panel. These were all interesting presentations and I enjoyed listening to them and learned a lot. So we'll take a quick 15-20 minute break here and come back with panel 8. So thanks much.